Let me tell you about Priya Sharma. 33 years old. Senior financial analyst at Atlas Capital Management, a mid-sized investment firm in Chicago managing $4.2 billion in client assets. Priya was the kind of employee companies pretend they want. Quiet. Meticulous. The person who caught the $12 million valuation error in the Hensley fund that would have triggered an SEC inquiry if it had gone unnoticed for another trading day. 5 years at Atlas, 3 promotions. Spotless performance reviews. She was also, for the last 14 months, the target of a harassment campaign by her direct supervisor, Managing Director Keith Warrington, that had escalated from comments to retaliation to something that, by the time Priya finally walked into HR, had been documented in 127 pages of time-stamped evidence. What Priya did not know when she sat across from HR Director Diane Prescott was that Diane had received 2 previous complaints about Keith in the past 3 years, both filed, both reviewed, both resulting in the same outcome, nothing. Because Keith managed $380 million in client relationships, because he played golf with board members, because he was, in leadership language, too valuable to lose. What Diane told Priya, with the practiced empathy of someone who had delivered this line before, was simple. Priya, I hear you. But we need something concrete. Can you prove the harassment? Priya looked at her. Yes, she said. What happened next did not just end Keith Warrington's career. It cost Atlas Capital Management $22 million. Destroyed reputations. Triggered an EEOC investigation that became a case study in institutional failure. And made Priya Sharma the reason every HR department in Chicago started taking documentation seriously. This is the story of how one analyst took 127 pages to the federal government and burned the house down on the way out. Buckle up, because when HR tells you to prove it, they should be very careful what they are asking for. The harassment started small. The way it always does. 14 months before the HR meeting, Keith called Priya into his office for what was supposed to be a routine performance conversation. He closed the door. Told her she was one of the most talented analysts he had ever worked with. Then told her she would go a lot further if she learned to be less uptight and more social. Priya smiled professionally, thanked him, left, and wrote the first entry in what would become a 127-page document. Date, time, location, exact words. Her response. Who else was present? Because Priya was a financial analyst. And financial analysts document everything. The comments escalated. You should smile more. Clients like warmth. That dress is a good choice. Wear it more often. I put you on the Singapore trip instead of Mike because you are easier on the eyes at client dinners, each one documented. Then came the career sabotage. Priya was pulled from the Hensley Fund analysis, the project she has saved, and reassigned to dead-end compliance work. Her annual review, despite years of spotless feedback, suddenly contained the phrase needs improvement in leadership presence. Her promotion to vice president, discussed in documented planning meetings, was deferred. Then came the text messages. Late night. Inappropriate. Escalating. Private dinner to discuss your career trajectory. Why are you ignoring my invitation? And then the one that made Priya's blood run cold. You know I control your future here. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. Priya screenshotted every message. Backed them up in 3 places. Printed hard copies, and put them in a fireproof box at home. Then she started recording. Illinois was a one-party consent state. Priya had confirmed this with an employment attorney before she recorded a single word. Over the next 4 months, she recorded 7 conversations with Keith, including one where he explicitly told her that her promotion depended on her being more available after hours, and that if she kept being difficult, he would make sure she was restructured out before the next cycle. That recording was 4 minutes and 37 seconds long. It would later be described by the EEOC investigator as the most damaging piece of evidence he had reviewed in 11 years. Priya did not go to HR first. She went to an attorney. Margaret Chun, employment law, 15 years, the kind of lawyer whose name made corporate counsel go pale. Margaret reviewed the 127 pages. Listened to all 7 recordings, read every text message. This is one of the most thoroughly documented harassment cases I have ever seen, she said. I was trained to document everything, Priya said. Numbers, patterns, anomalies. Keith was an anomaly, Margaret almost smiled. We have 2 options, she said. File internally first, then escalate. Or go straight to the EEOC. File internally first, Priya said. I want them to have the chance to do the right thing. And if they do not, Margaret asked. Then we do it for them, Priya said. The HR meeting was on a Thursday morning. Priya brought a 30-page summary binder, the most damaging evidence organized chronologically. Diane listened for 45 minutes. Nodded in the right places. Took notes that were remarkably sparse for a presentation like this. Then Diane said it. Priya, I hear you, but we need something concrete. Can you prove the harassment? Priya stared at her. She had just spent 45 minutes proving it. I just did, Priya said. Diane shifted. Sometimes interpersonal dynamics can be misinterpreted. Keith has been here 12 years. Before we escalate this, we need to make sure we are not conflating management style with something else. Diane, Priya said, I have audio recordings. Diane stopped talking. 7 recordings, Priya continued. Including one where Keith explicitly conditions my promotion on personal availability after hours. Time-stamped. Backed up. The color left Diane's face. I also have documentation of 2 previous complaints against Keith, Priya added. Neither resulted in disciplinary action. Diane opened her mouth. How do you know that? I am an analyst, Priya said. I analyze. Diane was quiet for a long moment. I will need to escalate this to legal, she said. Please do, Priya said. And please document that I reported this formally today, with evidence, and that I expect a real investigation with a defined timeline. Priya left the binder on the table, walked back to her desk, and waited. 14 days passed, no investigation notice. No follow-up, no communication. On day 15, Priya received an email from Diane. After careful review, we have determined that the matters you raised do not meet the threshold for a formal investigation at this time. We encourage you to continue using our open-door policy. Priya read it once. Then forwarded it to Margaret. Margaret called within the hour. They are protecting him and hoping you go away, she said. I am not going away, Priya said. I know, Margaret said. We file with the EEOC tomorrow. The EEOC complaint was filed the next morning, 127 pages of evidence. 7 recordings, text archives, prior complaint references. Diane's dismissal email, everything. The investigator assigned to the case was Carl Jeffries, 11 years handling workplace harassment matters. After reviewing the initial filing, he made one note in his case log. Complainant documentation is exceptional. Employer response pattern suggests institutional awareness and deliberate inaction. Carl requested Atlas internal records. The unredacted versions, obtained after a formal demand, confirmed what Priya had referenced. 2 previous complaints against Keith, both by female analysts. Both closed within 30 days. Both marked resolved through coaching conversation. Neither analyst was still at Atlas. One resigned 6 months later. The other was restructured out in a reorganization that eliminated her role and only her role. Carl noted the pattern. The investigation took 8 months. During that time, Priya was not fired. Margaret had made it clear in writing that any adverse action would be textbook retaliation. But the environment changed. Priya was excluded from projects. Her access to important fund data was revoked. Her desk was moved to a windowless interior office. She documented all of it. Margaret filed a supplemental retaliation claim 4 months into the investigation. Carl added it to the file. The EEOC findings arrived on a Tuesday. Reasonable cause to believe Atlas Capital Management engaged in unlawful harassment and retaliation. The findings cited 14 months of documented harassment, institutional failure to investigate, a pattern of ignored complaints, retaliatory actions after the report. Outside counsel reviewed the file and gave Atlas General Counsel David Mercer the only honest answer available. This is one of the strongest EEOC cases I have seen in years. If this goes to trial, you will lose. David walked into the CEO's office. We need to settle now, he said. Atlas opened at $3.5 million. With an NDA. Margaret said no. Atlas came back at $8 million. With an NDA, and Keith on administrative leave. Margaret said no again. The NDA was non-negotiable for Priya. Atlas tried one more time to frame silence as protection. Margaret answered with a line that ended the discussion. My client has 127 pages of protection. She does not need yours. The final settlement was reached on a Thursday afternoon. $22 million, no NDA, Keith Warrington terminated for cause. No severance, no reference. Diane Prescott terminated for failure to investigate. Atlas required to implement a third-party harassment reporting system, annual training, and an independent ombudsman, monitored by the EEOC for 3 years. A formal written acknowledgment from the board that Priya's complaint had been substantiated and that the company response had been inadequate. Priya signed on a Friday morning. She did not celebrate. She made herself a cup of tea. Called her mother. It is done, she said. Keith Warrington has not held a financial services position since. 3 firms considered him. 3 firms ran background checks. 3 firms declined. The $380 million in relationships that made him too valuable to lose transferred to other managing directors within 60 days. Not one client left because Keith was gone. Diane left finance entirely. David Mercer implemented the new reporting system personally, reviews every complaint filed through it, keeps a copy of the EEOC findings in his desk drawer. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. Priya left Atlas 3 months after the settlement. Took 6 months off. Then joined a fintech startup as head of risk, where her talent for identifying patterns and institutional blind spots was finally valued. She donated $2 million to a legal aid fund for harassment victims. Another $1 million to a Women in Finance scholarship fund. She kept the rest. Because she had earned it. Every dollar, every page, every recording. She keeps one document framed in her home office. Not the settlement. Not the EEOC finding, Diane's email. The one that said the matters raised did not meet the threshold. Underneath in Priya's handwriting. 127 pages was not enough for HR. It was more than enough for the federal government. And that, my friends, is how one financial analyst turned 14 months of documented harassment into a $22 million settlement. Without a leak, without a scene, and without once losing her composure. Because some people are told to prove it. And some people already have. Priya had 127 pages. 7 recordings. And the kind of patience that only comes from knowing the truth is on your side. If this story moved you, subscribe to Tangled Stories, drop a like, and share this with anyone who has ever been told their experience did not meet the threshold. Because here, every story has a twist. And sometimes that twist is 127 pages the other side never expected you to have. I am Brett, and I will see you in the next one.